This is a learning object on software coding standards presented from Florida A&M University. The objectives for this learning object are the following. Upon completion, the student will be able to understand the purpose of coding standards or coding guidelines, be able to, given a set of guidelines, to recognize violations, to be able to make judgments about the relative importance of a set of guidelines, be able to explain to others the rationale, the possible benefits of a specific guideline, and to identify a likely consequence of not enforcing a specific guideline in the context of individual programming and team programming activities. Now, software coding standards encompass conventions used by a community of developers that govern the layout of the code and patterns of programming language usage for the purpose of enhancing certain qualities of the software, primarily the maintainability of software. So software coding standards achieve a level of branding for an organization in that the end result is a consistent look and feel of software that an organization projects. The standards also enable the implementation of best practices given a specific programming language. And finally, the goal of maintainability simply relates to the efficiency with which one can understand a piece of code, given that code tends to last many years well beyond the lifetime or the employment of the author. In this lesson, we're going to demonstrate coding standards by way of an example. Then we're going to look at a particular code template that can be used as is. And finally, we will look at a specific set of coding standards that's appropriate for a CS1 class. So let's begin with an example of a program written in a CS1 class. This is a C++ class, so we notice that there's a header comment that identifies the assignment, identifies the author, and then we have the layout of the program. And the layout of the program, a couple of noteworthy things is that this is the beginning block for the program, and everything inside of the block is indented, and there's a consistent indentation level, which is 3 or 4 spaces. Right. Notice also that there's a requirement to document variables upon their creation. The standard will state more details regarding that. For this particular class, we're also requiring that students print out a copyright statement declaring the authorship. Finally, notice that different sections of the code have vertical spacing where there's vertical white space, and a section of code that begins with what we call an algorithm comment. Notice that the delimiters used for that are slightly different, just so they appear different. And the code for each algorithm step appears immediately underneath the comment delimiters. Next, let's take a look at just a template for that corresponds to the example I gave you. And finally, we're going to take a quick look at the standards in detail. Now, this can be copied and used and adapted as is. Now, let's look at the standard. And this standard is comparable to what you will find in a CS1 class. In a professional standard, the standards become very detailed, and they are segmented or partitioned into various software qualities that are to be achieved by adhering to certain standards. So the first standard is that programs have a preamble, which is a block comment. There's a standard, there's a set of rules regarding the physical layout of the program. One that's very common is that you cannot use excessively long lines. And the rationale is, should you have to read code that goes beyond this, becomes difficult. There's a section dealing with consistent indentation and the use of tabs. One thing to note is in standard C, most of the time you see the open brace for the block occurring to the right of the right parenthesis. In this class, I require students to do it. Students are required to do it a different way. And there's a section dealing with documenting variables as they are created. And then there's a section just on algorithm comments, how they should appear. And notice that algorithm steps need to be numbered so that the sequence is clear. And finally, there's a requirement that a copyright notice is output when the program runs. Okay. Now, with this, I am going to take a quick glimpse at another coding standard from another institution, and notice that this standard or guideline is very informal and very brief, and it represents a minimal set of guidelines for the appearance of a program. Now with that, we are going to stop, and I will refer you to a video from Philip Johnson that goes into greater detail about the importance of programming standards from a software engineering standpoint. Additional resources include an example of the C++ style guide for Google and a very professional style guide for the language Ada. And this is a fairly old document, but it shows the depth and the breadth of programming standards. Following your completion of these artifacts, you will be given an assessment. Thank you.